Marcus Wellington adjusted his expensive watch as he walked through the marble lobby of Wellington Industries. The 50-year-old CEO had built his technology empire from nothing. But today, like every day for the past 3 years, success felt hollow. His mind wasn't on quarterly reports or board meetings. It was on his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who hadn't spoken a single word since her mother's death in a car accident. The doctors called it selective mutism, triggered by trauma. They said Emma could speak physically, but something deep inside her had locked the words away. Marcus had tried everything: the best therapists money could buy, speech specialists, child psychologists, even experimental treatments. Nothing worked. Emma remained silent, communicating only through nods, gestures, and the occasional drawing. As Marcus finished another draining day at the office, his phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma's nanny. Emma had another difficult day at school. The teacher says she's becoming more withdrawn. Maybe some fresh air would help. Marcus sighed, loosening his tie. He made a quick decision that would change everything, though he didn't know it yet. Instead of heading home to their mansion in the hills, he drove to Riverside Park, a modest playground in a middle-class neighborhood he'd never visited before. He thought the change of scenery might help Emma somehow. The playground was bustling with children and parents when they arrived. Emma clung to Marcus's hand, her large brown eyes taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. She wore a pristine white dress and matching shoes, clothes that made her stand out among the other children in their play clothes. Marcus found an empty bench and sat down, watching Emma hover uncertainly nearby. She wanted to play, but didn't know how to join the other children without words. This had become their routine, arriving at places full of hope, only to leave feeling more isolated than before. That's when Keisha Williams appeared, though Marcus didn't notice her at first. He was too busy checking his phone, trying to solve a crisis at work even during this precious time with his daughter. Keisha was pushing her 6-year-old son Jamal on the swings, her laughter mixing with his squeals of delight. Keisha worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and serving at a diner during the day, just to keep her small apartment and provide for Jamal. Her husband had left when Jamal was 2, claiming he wasn't ready for the responsibility. Since then, Keisha had learned to be both mother and father, finding joy in the smallest moments with her son. She noticed Emma immediately. The little girl stood alone near the slide, watching other children play but making no move to join them. Something about Emma's posture, the way she held herself so carefully, so hopefully yet hesitantly, touched Keisha's heart. "Jamal, baby, slow down on that swing," Keisha called, walking over to where Emma stood. She crouched down to Emma's level, her warm brown eyes meeting the child's uncertain gaze. "Hey there, sweetness. I'm Keisha. What's your name?" she asked gently. Emma looked up at this kind stranger, then glanced toward Marcus, who was still absorbed in his phone. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, simply pointing to herself. Keisha didn't seem fazed by the lack of response. "That's okay, honey. Sometimes words are hard. You want to try the slide? It looks like fun." Emma nodded eagerly. Something about Keisha's voice made her feel safe in a way she hadn't experienced since her mother died. Keisha took Emma's small hand in her own, noticing how soft and well cared for it was, and led her to the slide. "Now, you go up those steps real careful like," Keisha encouraged, staying close as Emma climbed. "That's it, baby girl. You're doing great." Marcus finally looked up from his phone to see his daughter actually playing, guided by a woman he'd never seen before. For a moment, he felt a flash of his old protective instincts. Who was this stranger talking to his child? But then he saw something that stopped him cold. Emma was smiling. Not the polite, careful smile she gave to doctors and teachers, but a real, genuine smile of joy. Emma went down the slide and immediately ran back to Keisha, tugging on her hand to go again. Keisha laughed, a sound so genuine and warm that it seemed to light up Emma's entire face. "Again? All right, sweetheart. But this time, maybe you want to try going down backward? That's what my Jamal likes to do." Jamal had finished with the swings and joined them. He was a bubbly child with his mother's easy smile and an immediate acceptance of this quiet new friend. "Hi, I'm Jamal. Want to see something cool?" he asked Emma, not waiting for a response. He demonstrated going down the slide in various creative ways: backward, sideways, and even on his belly. Emma giggled silently, her eyes sparkling with delight. Marcus watched this scene unfold, feeling emotions he hadn't experienced in years. When was the last time he'd seen Emma truly happy? When was the last time he'd played with her instead of simply supervising while checking emails? Keisha noticed Marcus sitting alone on the bench and made her way over, leaving the children playing together under her watchful eye. "Excuse me, is that beautiful little girl yours?" she asked, settling onto the bench beside him. "Yes, that's Emma," Marcus replied, tucking his phone away. Something about Keisha's presence made his usual business persona feel inappropriate. "I'm Marcus." "She's precious," Keisha said, watching Emma attempt to go down the slide backward like Jamal had shown her. "How old is she?" "8," Marcus answered. She doesn't talk much. Actually, she doesn't talk at all." Keisha nodded thoughtfully, not showing the pity or uncomfortable curiosity Marcus usually encountered when he mentioned Emma's condition. "Some folks just need time to find their voice. My grandmother always said that silence doesn't mean there's nothing to say. Sometimes it means there's too much to say." Marcus looked at this woman more carefully. She was wearing a simple sundress that had seen better days, and her purse was worn at the edges. Her hands showed the calluses of hard work, but her smile was radiant. There was something about her presence that felt like sunshine after a long winter. "Are you from around here?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "Live about 6 blocks that way." Keisha pointed east, toward the older part of town. "This playground is Jamal's favorite. We come here most evenings after I get off work. Well, when I can." She paused, watching her son show Emma how to hang from the monkey bars. "Some days are harder than others, you know?" Marcus didn't know, not really. His challenges were different: boardroom battles, stock prices, competitors. But looking at Keisha, seeing her joy despite what he was beginning to understand were real struggles, he felt humbled. "What do you do for work?" he asked. "Whatever I can," Keisha replied with a self-deprecating smile. "Clean offices at night, work at Miller's Diner during the day. Nothing fancy, but it keeps us going." Marcus felt a strange sensation in his chest. Here was a woman working 2 jobs just to survive, and she radiated more contentment than he'd felt in years despite all his wealth and success. More importantly, she'd accomplished something in 20 minutes that teams of expensive specialists couldn't manage. She'd made Emma happy. They watched their children play together, and Marcus found himself relaxing for the first time in months. Keisha had an easy way of talking that made conversation flow naturally. She told him about Jamal's love of dinosaurs, her dream of maybe going back to school someday, and her mother who helped with childcare when she could. "What about you?" Keisha asked. "What kind of work do you do?" Marcus hesitated. Usually, when people learned he was the CEO of a major company, everything changed. They became either intimidated or suddenly very interested in what he could do for them. But something about this moment, this woman, made him want to be honest. "I run a technology company," he said simply. "It keeps me busy." "Too busy, probably." Keisha nodded. "That must be hard, balancing work and raising a little one." "Is Emma's mama?" She let the question hang gently in the air. "She died 3 years ago," Marcus said quietly. "Car accident. Emma hasn't spoken since." Keisha's expression filled with compassion, but not pity. "Oh, honey, that's a heavy load for such a little heart to carry. And for you too." The simple acknowledgement of his own pain caught Marcus off guard. Most people focused on Emma, as they should, but no one had recognized that he was struggling too. He'd been so focused on being strong for his daughter that he'd forgotten he was also grieving. "Some days I don't know if I'm doing anything right," Marcus admitted, surprised by his own honesty. "I can give her everything money can buy, but I can't give her back her voice. I can't bring back her mother." "Can't nobody do that," Keisha said gently. "But look at her now." They both turned to watch Emma, who was engaged in an elaborate game of tag with Jamal. She was running and laughing silently, her face alive with joy. It was the most animated Marcus had seen her since before the accident. "Sometimes healing don't come from trying so hard," Keisha continued. "Sometimes it comes from just being allowed to be a kid again." As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself reluctant to leave. Emma clearly felt the same way. When he finally said it was time to go, she looked genuinely disappointed for the first time in years, which was, in its own way, a breakthrough. "Same time tomorrow?" Keisha asked casually as she gathered Jamal's backpack. Emma looked up at Marcus with pleading eyes. He made another impulsive decision that surprised him. If that works for you, we'd like that very much. Works perfect, Keisha smiled. We'll be here. As they walked to their respective cars, Marcus to his luxury sedan, Keisha to her old but well-maintained Honda. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation for tomorrow. That night, Emma drew pictures for the first time in months. Not the sad, dark images that had worried her therapists, but bright, colorful drawings of playgrounds and children playing. She drew herself and Jamal on the slide, and in the corner of the paper, she carefully drew two adults sitting on a bench. Marcus found the drawing on Emma's nightstand the next morning and felt his throat tighten with emotion. For the first time since Sarah's death, there was hope in his daughter's artwork. The next evening couldn't come fast enough. Marcus found himself leaving work early, something he hadn't done in years without a family emergency. Emma was waiting by the door when he arrived home, already dressed and ready to go. At the playground, Keisha and Jamal were already there. 3 weeks into their playground routine, Marcus began noticing changes beyond Emma's obvious happiness. She started sleeping through the night without the nightmares that had plagued her since the accident. She ate better, played more freely at home, and even attempted to interact with Mrs. Rodriguez in ways she hadn't before. But, most importantly, she had begun drawing pictures of her mother again. Not sad, memorial drawings, but happy memories of times they'd shared together. Marcus found himself changing too. The rigid schedule that had governed his life since Sarah's death began to loosen. He delegated more at work, trusted his team with decisions he would have previously micromanaged, and discovered that the company didn't collapse without his constant oversight. Instead, it seemed to run more smoothly, as if his previous anxiety and control had been creating problems rather than solving them. Keisha had become a bright spot in both their lives. She never asked about Marcus's wealth or position, treating him simply as another parent navigating the challenges of raising a child alone. Her perspective on life, shaped by genuine hardship but not hardened by it, offered Marcus insights he'd never considered. One evening, as autumn painted the playground with golden leaves, Keisha arrived looking more tired than usual. She tried to hide it behind her customary smile, but Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs of her moods. "Long day?" he asked as Jamal and Emma ran off to explore a new piece of playground equipment that had been installed. "Picked up an extra shift at the diner," Keisha explained, settling onto their usual bench with a slight wince. "Mrs. Patterson next door, who usually watches Jamal, had to go to the hospital. Nothing serious, but I had to bring him to work with me. My manager wasn't too happy about it." Marcus frowned. "What did you do?" "Made it work," Keisha said with forced lightness. Jamal sat in the back booth with his coloring books and homework. He was good as gold, but you know how some customers are. They see a little black boy in a restaurant and assume he's causing trouble even when he's sitting quiet as a mouse. The casual way she mentioned the racial dimension caught Marcus off guard. In his insulated world of corporate boardrooms and exclusive neighborhoods, he rarely confronted such realities directly. It forced him to consider challenges Keisha faced that he'd never even thought about. "That must be incredibly difficult," he said, meaning it. Keisha shrugged, but he could see the exhaustion in her shoulders. "You do what you have to do for your kids." Besides, Jamal learned some good lessons today about hard work and making the best of tough situations. As if summoned by their conversation, Jamal came running over, breathless with excitement. "Mom, Emma, and I found a caterpillar. Can we keep it? Please." Emma appeared beside him, holding a small container she'd found somewhere, her eyes bright with the same enthusiasm. This was another development Marcus had noticed. Emma's natural curiosity about the world was returning. "Well now, where would we keep a caterpillar?" Keisha asked, kneeling to examine their find. "He needs special things to eat and a safe place to grow. We could make him a house," Jamal suggested. "Emma knows about butterflies, don't you, Emma?" Emma nodded vigorously, then ran to Marcus, tugging on his sleeve. She mimed reading a book, then pointed to herself. "She has several books about butterflies at home." Marcus translated, amazed at how naturally he'd learned to understand his daughter's nonverbal communication. Would you like to bring them tomorrow, sweetheart? Emma's enthusiastic nod made Keisha smile. That sounds perfect. Maybe we can learn how to help this little guy turn into something beautiful. As they carefully released the caterpillar into a safer spot among the bushes, Marcus found himself thinking about transformation. Emma was changing, growing stronger and more confident each day. But so was he, in ways he was just beginning to understand. Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus sat in his study staring at his laptop screen. Instead of quarterly reports, he found himself researching something entirely different. Local childcare programs, after-school services, and the challenges facing single working mothers. What he learned disturbed him. Keisha's situation wasn't unique. Thousands of parents in their city struggled with the impossible balance of work and childcare, often forced to choose between paying rent and being present for their children. The statistics on childhood development outcomes, educational opportunities, and economic mobility painted a stark picture of inequality he'd been completely insulated from. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus's business mind turned toward social problems rather than profit margins. He began sketching ideas, drawing connections between resources and needs, imagining solutions with the same intensity he once brought to product development and market strategy. The next evening brought unexpected developments. As Marcus and Emma approached the playground, they saw Keisha and Jamal sitting on a bench looking dejected rather than playing. Jamal's usual bright energy was subdued, and Keisha's smile seemed forced. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, settling beside Keisha while Emma immediately went to comfort Jamal in her own quiet way. "Lost my day job," Keisha said simply, staring at her hands. "The manager decided I was unreliable after yesterday. Apparently, having to bring your child to work once in 3 years makes you a liability." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, not the controlled, business anger he was used to, but something more personal and protective. "That's ridiculous. You're the most reliable person I know. Tell that to my bills," Keisha said with a bitter laugh that held no humor. "Night cleaning job doesn't pay enough to cover rent on its own. I've got maybe 2 months before." She trailed off, glancing toward Jamal. "Before what?" Marcus asked gently. "Before we have to move. Somewhere cheaper. Probably far from here." Keisha's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath. "I've been looking into shelters, assistance programs. Pride's a luxury I can't afford when it comes to keeping a roof over my baby's head." The thought of losing Keisha and Jamal hit Marcus with surprising force. These evening visits had become essential to both his and Emma's well-being. But more than that, the idea of this kind, strong woman and her wonderful son facing homelessness because of circumstances beyond their control seemed fundamentally wrong. What if there was another option? Marcus heard himself saying. Keisha looked at him with cautious hope. "What do you mean?" Marcus's mind was racing, but for once, his calculations weren't about profit and loss. They were about right and wrong, about the kind of world he wanted Emma to grow up in, about the debt he owed to the woman who had given his daughter back her smile. "I run Wellington Industries," he said carefully. "We're always looking for good people. People who are reliable, hardworking, good with others." Keisha's expression shifted, and Marcus could see her pride warring with her desperation. "I don't have a college degree. I don't have office experience." "You have something more valuable," Marcus said. "You have character. You care about people. You see solutions where others see problems." He paused, thinking about all the conversations they'd shared. "You understand things about leadership and bringing out the best in others that half my MBA-trained managers never learned." "Marcus," Keisha began, but he held up a hand. "This isn't charity," he said firmly. "This is recognition of talent. Emma isn't the only one you've helped. These past weeks, watching how you handle challenges, how you build people up, how you create community, you've taught me things about leadership I never knew I was missing." That night, Marcus did something unprecedented. He called an emergency board meeting for the next morning to propose a new company initiative, an on-site childcare facility and family support program for employees. He'd done his homework, presenting detailed cost-benefit analyses, research on productivity improvements, and employee retention statistics. But more than the numbers, he spoke about values, about the kind of company Wellington Industries could become if it truly supported its people. He talked about untapped talent in their community and the innovation that came from diverse perspectives and experiences. The board was skeptical. Several members questioned the expense, the liability, the precedent it would set. But Marcus had learned something from Keisha about conviction and standing up for what mattered. He used every tool of persuasion at his disposal, calling in favors, making compromises, and ultimately threatening to make it a personal project if the company wouldn't support it. In the end, they approved a pilot program. Wellington Industries would launch a comprehensive family support initiative, starting with on-site childcare and extending to job training programs for parents who needed career development opportunities. When Marcus arrived at the playground the next evening, he carried a folder of papers and a heart full of nervous excitement. Emma seemed to sense something important was happening, staying close to his side as they approached Keisha and Jamal. "I have a proposition for you," Marcus said without preamble. "But first, I want you to know this has nothing to do with our friendship and everything to do with your qualifications." Keisha raised an eyebrow, her protective instincts clearly activated. "What kind of proposition?" Marcus handed her the folder. "A job, Director of Family Services for Wellington Industries. It's a new position, heading up our new family support program. The job includes developing and managing on-site childcare, creating support services for working parents, and building community partnerships." Keisha stared at the papers without opening the folder. "Marcus, I can't. The salary is $68,000 to start, with full benefits including health insurance, dental, and vision for you and Jamal. There's also tuition assistance if you want to pursue additional education, flexible scheduling, and, of course, Jamal would have a spot in the childcare program." $68,000? Keisha's voice was barely a whisper. "Marcus, that's more than I make in 2 years at my current jobs." "It's the market rate for the position," Marcus said honestly. "I had HR research comparable roles at other companies. If anything, we should probably be offering more given the scope of responsibilities." Emma had been watching this conversation with intense focus, and suddenly, she did something she'd never done before. She walked over to Keisha, took her hand, and placed it over her own heart again. Then, she looked directly into Keisha's eyes and mouthed something that made both adults freeze. "Please," Emma had mouthed, clear as day. No sound, but unmistakably, deliberately, "Please." Tears sprang to Keisha's eyes. "Baby girl," she whispered. "Did you just—" Emma nodded solemnly, then repeated the gesture and the word, "Please." Marcus felt his world shift on its axis. Emma was 6 months after Keisha started her position at Wellington Industries. The Family Services Program had become the crown jewel of the company's employee benefits. Word spread throughout the business community about Wellington's innovative approach to supporting working families, and Marcus found himself fielding calls from other CEOs wanting to replicate their model. But the real transformation was happening in smaller, more personal ways. Emma had enrolled in the on-site childcare program, where she spent afternoons with Jamal and other children while Marcus finished his workday. For the first time since her mother's death, Emma had a stable routine surrounded by people who cared about her. She still didn't speak, but her communication had become richer and more expressive. She used gestures, drawings, and even simple sign language that Keisha had taught both children. The playground remained their special place, but now their evening visits included picnics, nature walks, and elaborate games that Emma helped design. Her creativity and intelligence, so long subdued by grief, flourished under Keisha's nurturing attention and Jamal's boundless friendship. Marcus had discovered that being a better father made him a better leader. The patience he'd learned in understanding Emma's nonverbal communication improved his listening skills with employees. The empathy Keisha had taught him about seeing beyond surface circumstances made him more effective at identifying and developing talent within his company. Their unconventional family arrangement raised eyebrows in Marcus's social circle, but he found he cared less and less about others' opinions. What mattered was Emma's happiness, his own growing contentment, and the deep friendship that had developed between him and Keisha. It was a Thursday evening in late spring when everything changed again. They had been at the playground for about an hour when Jamal discovered a baby bird that had fallen from its nest. The tiny creature was clearly injured, unable to fly, and crying pitifully for its mother. "Mom, we have to help it," Jamal said urgently, his tender heart breaking for the small creature. Keisha examined the bird gently. It had a damaged wing and was clearly in distress. "Honey, this little baby is hurt pretty bad. We need to get it to someone who knows how to help birds." Emma had been watching this drama unfold with intense focus. She approached the bird slowly, kneeling down beside Keisha. For a long moment, she simply observed the tiny creature struggle. Then, something shifted in Emma's expression. She looked up at the tree where the bird had fallen from, noting how high the nest was, how impossible it would be for the baby to return home on its own. She looked at the bird's obvious pain and fear, and something deep inside her seemed to crack open. "It's scared," Emma whispered. The words were so soft that at first, nobody was sure they'd heard correctly. Marcus felt his heart stop. Keisha's hands stilled on the bird. Jamal looked up in surprise. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Keisha asked gently. Emma's voice was rusty from disuse, barely audible, but unmistakably real. "The bird. It's scared. Like I was scared." Tears sprang to Marcus's eyes as 3 years of silence broke like a dam. But Emma wasn't finished. "When Mama died," she continued, her small voice growing slightly stronger, "I felt like a baby bird that fell out of its nest. I was hurt and scared, and I didn't know how to get home." Keisha's own tears began flowing freely, but she kept her voice steady and encouraging. "Tell me more about that feeling, baby girl." Emma looked up at Marcus, then back at Keisha, her brown eyes serious and thoughtful. "I forgot how to make sounds come out. The scared feeling was too big for words. But Keisha," she turned to smile at the woman who had become her second mother. "Keisha taught me that even when you can't fly, people can still love you." Marcus knelt down beside his daughter, his voice thick with emotion. "Emma, sweetheart, you found your voice." "I never lost it," Emma said with startling wisdom for an 8-year-old. "I just forgot it was safe to use it." But Keisha made everything safe again. The four of them sat in a circle around the injured bird, and Emma continued to speak in her soft, careful voice. She talked about her memories of her mother, her fear that if she spoke, it might somehow make her mother's death more real. She talked about how Keisha's kindness had slowly healed the scared place inside her heart. "I was waiting," Emma explained, "for someone who would understand my quiet. Mama always understood my quiet, and then she was gone. But Keisha understood too. They carefully transported the baby bird to a wildlife rehabilitation center, where a veterinarian assured them it would recover and eventually be released back to the wild." As they drove home, Emma chattered softly about birds, about healing, about how sometimes broken things could become strong again. That evening, Emma called Mrs. Rodriguez to share her breakthrough. She called her grandparents, who cried with joy on the phone. She even insisted on calling Dr. Peterson, the child psychologist who had worked with her for over a year. But it was her conversation with Marcus, as he tucked her into bed that night, that revealed the depth of her journey. "Daddy," she said, testing the sound of the word after so many months of silence. "Are you going to marry Keisha?" Marcus nearly choked on his surprise. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "She loves us," Emma said matter-of-factly. "And you love her. And Jamal is like my brother already. I think Mama would want us to be a real family." Marcus had been carefully avoiding examining his own feelings for Keisha, afraid of complicating their friendship or putting pressure on their professional relationship. But Emma, with the clarity that children sometimes possess, had identified what he'd been trying to ignore. He did love Keisha. He loved her strength, her wisdom, her generous heart. He loved how she had healed his daughter and taught him how to be a better man. He loved her laugh, her insights, her unwavering integrity. He loved the family they had inadvertently created together. "What would you think if I did ask Keisha to marry us?" Marcus asked carefully. "I would be the happiest girl in the whole world," Emma said without hesitation. "And I think Jamal would be happy too. He told me he wishes you could be his daddy for real." The next morning brought another surprise. Marcus arrived at work to find Keisha in his office, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Marcus's heart sank. Had Emma's breakthrough somehow changed things? Had Keisha realized that their relationship had become too complicated? I've been thinking, Keisha continued, about us. About this family we've built. About what it means and where it's going. Keisha, if this is about, Marcus began. But, she held up a hand. Let me finish, she said with a small smile. Last night, after Emma found her voice, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how we got here, how much my life has changed, how much Jamal has grown and flourished with you and Emma in our lives. She took a deep breath. I love you, Marcus. I love you and Emma both, and not just as friends. I love you as the man who sees the best in people, who turned his pain into purpose, who gave me a chance when no one else would. I love you as the father who would move mountains for his daughter, and as the partner who makes me want to be the best version of myself. Marcus felt his world realign again, but this time toward joy instead of loss. Keisha, I'm not finished, she said, her nervous smile growing wider. I also want you to know that I would never want to replace Emma's mother. Sarah will always be her first mom, and that's as it should be. But if you'll have me, I'd like to be her second mom. And I'd like you to be Jamal's second dad. Marcus crossed the room and took Keisha's hands in his. Are you proposing to me? He asked with wonder and delight. Maybe I am, Keisha said, her confidence returning. Someone has to, and you're taking too long to figure it out on your own. Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. In that case, yes. Absolutely, completely, forever yes. Their kiss was interrupted by a knock on the office door, followed immediately by Emma and Jamal bursting in. Both children took one look at their parents' faces and began jumping up and down with excitement. Does this mean we're really going to be a family? Jamal asked, his eyes bright with hope. We already are a family, Emma said with her newfound voice, clear and strong. Now it's just going to be official. The wedding took place 6 months later in Riverside Park, right next to the playground where their story had begun. It was a simple ceremony attended by family, friends, and the entire Wellington Industries team. Emma served as maid of honor, and Jamal was the ring bearer. Mrs. Rodriguez cried throughout the entire ceremony. But the most magical moment came during the reception, when Emma stood up to make a toast. Her voice was still soft, still careful, but filled with love and gratitude. Before I met Keisha and Jamal, she began, I thought my voice was broken forever. I thought when Mama died, she took all my words with her. But I learned that love doesn't take things away. It gives them back to you when you're ready to receive them. She raised her small glass of sparkling cider. Keisha taught me that families aren't just about blood. They're about people who choose to love each other every single day. Today, we're choosing each other officially. But the truth is, we've been choosing each other since that first day at the playground. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd as Emma concluded. To our family, the one we found, the one we built, and the one we'll keep building together forever. As Marcus looked around at their gathered loved ones, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. 3 years ago, he had been a man who thought success could be measured in stock prices and quarterly earnings. He had been a father who could provide everything for his daughter except what she needed most, healing and hope. Now he understood that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought or earned through achievement. They could only be received through openness to love, willingness to be vulnerable, and recognition that the greatest treasures often came in unexpected packages. Emma's voice had returned not through expensive therapy or medical intervention, but through the simple power of unconditional love offered by a single mother who saw potential where others saw problems. In healing Emma, Keisha had also healed Marcus, teaching him that true strength came not from controlling everything, but from trusting in the goodness of others. Their story became legend at Wellington Industries, inspiring the company's ongoing commitment to supporting families and building community. The playground where they met was renovated and named the Sarah Wellington Memorial Garden, honoring Emma's first mother while celebrating the new life that had grown from loss. Years later, when people asked Emma about the day she found her voice again, she would always tell them the same thing. I didn't find my voice. Love found it for me. And once love finds your voice, you never lose it again. The little girl who had been silenced by trauma had become a young woman who used her voice to advocate for others facing their own struggles. Jamal grew up to become a teacher, inspired by his mother's example of lifting others up. Marcus transformed Wellington Industries into a model of corporate social responsibility, proving that businesses could be both profitable and humane. And Keisha? Keisha continued to be exactly what she had always been, a woman who saw the best in people and helped them see it in themselves. She just had a bigger platform and more resources to work with. Their family, born from loss and built through love, became proof that healing was possible, that hope could triumph over despair, and that sometimes the most profound changes began with the simplest acts of kindness from the most unexpected sources. The playground where it all started remained their favorite place, a reminder that magic could happen anywhere when hearts were open and love was present. And on quiet evenings, you could still find them there, a family that chose each other, voices raised in laughter and love, living proof that the best stories are the ones that end not with happily ever after, but with happily ever after together. Communicating more directly than she had in 3 years, advocating for something she wanted with a clarity that stunned him. She understood, somehow, that Keisha's presence in their lives was important enough to fight for. "Well," Keisha said, wiping her eyes and smiling through her tears, "when you put it like that." She opened the folder and began reading the job description with growing amazement. "Marcus, this is everything I've ever dreamed of doing. Building programs to help families, creating support systems for kids. So you'll consider it?" Marcus asked, though Emma's intervention had made the answer clear. "Consider it." Keisha laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief. "I accept it. If you're sure, if this is real, then yes. Absolutely yes." Jamal, who had been listening with wide eyes, suddenly whooped and jumped up. "Does this mean we get to stay?" "We don't have to move. We get to stay, baby," Keisha confirmed, pulling him into a fierce hug. "We get to stay." As the four of them celebrated this new beginning, Marcus felt a profound sense of rightness. This wasn't just about helping a friend, though that would have been reason enough. It was about recognizing that the arbitrary barriers between people based on background, education, and opportunity often prevented society from accessing its most valuable resources: human decency, wisdom, and care. That night, Emma drew another picture. This one showed 4 people standing together outside a big building with Wellington Industries written carefully across the top. 2 adults and 2 children, all holding hands, all smiling. At the bottom, in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, she had written one word: family. Marcus found the drawing the next morning and understood that Emma had grasped something he was just beginning to comprehend. They weren't just employer and employee, or even just friends. Through circumstance, choice, and perhaps fate, they had become something rarer and more precious: a chosen family, bound together by love, respect, and shared commitment to each other's well-being. The transformation of their lives was just beginning. Emma ran to them immediately, and Marcus marveled at how quickly she'd formed this attachment. Usually, Emma took months to warm up to new people. "Hey there, sugar," Keisha greeted Emma with a warm hug. "Ready for some fun?" This time, Marcus didn't sit on the bench with his phone. Instead, he found himself drawn into their little circle. Keisha had brought a frisbee, and she patiently taught both children how to throw it properly. Marcus surprised himself by joining in, laughing when his expensive suit got dusty from diving to catch an errant throw. "You got good reflexes for a businessman," Keisha teased, and Marcus realized she'd somehow figured out more about his work situation. "Used to play football in college," Marcus replied, straightening his tie with a sheepish grin. "Seems like a lifetime ago." "It's never too late to remember who you used to be," Keisha said, and something in her tone made Marcus think she wasn't just talking about sports. As they played, Marcus noticed how naturally Keisha included Emma in everything, never making her feel different for her silence. She seemed to have an intuitive understanding of what Emma needed. Not pity or special treatment, but simple acceptance and inclusion. "You're really good with her," Marcus said during a quiet moment as they watched the children explore the playground equipment together. "Kids are kids," Keisha replied. "They all need the same things: love, attention, and somebody who believes in them. Emma's no different. She's just carrying some heavy feelings right now. The doctors say she may never speak again, Marcus said, voicing his deepest fear. Doctors know a lot about medicine, Keisha said thoughtfully. But they don't always know about hope. Sometimes the heart heals on its own timeline, not the one we want. That evening, as they prepared to leave again, something different happened. Emma approached Keisha and, very deliberately, placed her small hand over Keisha's heart. Then, she placed Keisha's hand over her own heart. It was a gesture so pure and meaningful that both adults felt tears spring to their eyes. I think, Keisha said softly, that little girl just told me she loves me. Marcus watched this exchange and realized something profound was happening. Emma wasn't just playing with new friends. She was learning to trust again. And so, perhaps, was he. As the days turned into weeks, their evening meetings at the playground became a cherished routine. Marcus found himself looking forward to these simple moments more than any business success. Keisha's wisdom, delivered without pretension or judgment, began to heal parts of him he didn't even realize were broken. And Emma? Emma was becoming herself again, one silent laugh at a time.